Sir,
everybody.
We can start, sir.
Shall we start?
Sir, yes, sir.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to everybody. My name is Tariq Karim. I'm director of the Center for Bay of Bengal Studies at the Independent University, a partner organization of the BIMRAD. It is my privilege and pleasure to be moderating this session on the theme of marine pollution, a growing peril to marine and coastal zone of Bangladesh. Marine pollution and coastal, our lives are intertwined with the waters. It's not just that man evolved, humankind and all species evolved from the waters. We are dependent very much on the waters, whether they are the rivers flowing through Bangladesh, the countless rivers, or the Bay of Bengal, which actually governs a lot of what happens in our ecosphere. And these are, we have made them endangered commons. That's the way I would choose to describe them. It's human activity. It has not happened overnight. It has not happened in the course of 1 generation or 5 generations. We have allowed this to happen maybe for centuries. But as is common with man, we take things for granted. We have taken the bounties of nature for granted, its abundance for granted, that it will forever keep on giving us, and we will keep on extracting without at some point thinking that without at some point nature, Mother Nature, whom we are hurting, is going to extract revenge. And unfortunately, it's come on our generation that Mother Nature has started wreaking her revenge on this planet and on man. She is not done yet. You have all read about the famous benchmark set where humankind has to reduce or stop further atmospheric warming. It should not be allowed to exceed 1.5 Celsius above what was at the pre-industrial levels. We thought we had still another 10 years or so to reach that tipping point. But recent reports say that we are already 1.25 Celsius above the pre-industrial level, which means that we are not 5 minutes away from midnight. We are now perhaps 2 minutes away from midnight. And if we cross the tipping point, there are many theories of what will happen, but they are all bad. And none of the options that will likely to afflict us are good. We can take comfort that, oh, this is not as bad as that, but that is not going to save us. It is not going to save our children. It is not going to save our grandchildren. It's not going to save our great-grandchildren. And if not for ourselves, I know that everything in this world today is a function of money, a function of profit and loss. But if not for ourselves, think of your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. That is what we have to address. Particularly, the rivers have been polluted almost beyond retrieval. Industries are forming. They need water to run their industries. They pollute quite merrily without any checks and control on how much or what they are dumping into the rivers. These don't remain in the rivers. They flow into the sea. And for us, the sea is the Bay of Bengal, and then that leads into the Indian Ocean. The Bay of Bengal is our immediate commons, which protects us from so many things. It nurtures the mangroves. The mangroves are today from 1775, I have a map. Till today, the contours have shrunk almost 50%, gentlemen. So that is just a little over 200 years. In between the partition of India and today, it has shrunk maybe of that 50%, about the maximum part of it, about 30% shrunk during this period. That is what we are doing. We are accelerating demolishing of the commons, not slowing down. And I think we need to take care. So if the mangroves disappear, they disappear along all the coast of the Bay of Bengal. They used to populate the Bay of Bengal littorals from Indonesia to Sri Lanka. They are existent only in West Bengal and Bangladesh, and to a small extent in the Arakan coast. We have to find out why, what are we doing that's making that happen. Number two, we have a dead zone of 60,000 square kilometers in the Bay of Bengal, which is perilously close to our coastline. It may seem far away when you go out in the ocean, but it's not really so far away if you look at the cartographic map of the zone. And we need to find out, is it our collective activities contributing to it? Is it something happening because of reaction with the silt in the soil? The silt in the soil, ultimately, we have a lot of input because it flows through all the lands which come from the eastern Himalayan rivers flow through all the land, and that carries the silt. Or is it coming from downstream, or rather the southern side of the Indian Ocean? Who's doing what? We don't know. We need to delve deep, because our dreams of harvesting the blue economy resources, particularly the marine the fishery resources, will come to zero, even though right now we are not able to extract more than 10% of the land or the zone given to us. So, and of course, marine plastics. Bay of Bengal is projected to become a plastic zone, a soup, in another 50 years, maybe another 60 years, but projection is 50 years, the whole Bay of Bengal will become a plastic soup. And there are plastic soups in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Why is it accumulating only in the Bay of Bengal and not other areas significantly in the Indian Ocean? So we have an array of experts here who will be going into various of these topics and giving a scientific explanation of what I have explained very briefly in layman's terms. But before I go to the others, I've just been blacked out by power failure, but I'll call on first the acting chair of BIMRAD, Admiral Mahbubul Alam, to deliver his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, sir. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Moderator, Ambassador Tariq Karim, prominent keynote speaker, Dr. Muhammad Abdurov from Khulna University, eminent panelists from different universities and organizations, proficient academician, national and international marine experts and researchers, maritime scholars, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. It's a matter of great honor for me to welcome you all in today's webinar on the theme Marine Pollution, a Growing Peril to the Marine and Coastal Zones of Bangladesh, jointly organized by BIMRAD and Khulna University. Today we have gathered here because we have a shared understanding of the importance of the ocean, marine and coastal zones, and we have a commitment to preserve it and protect it for our future generations. I am confident that our joint effort will positively identify the challenges that need to be addressed immediately in this sector. Distinguished guests, at the outset, I humbly pay my deepest tribute to the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who has envisaged the importance of the ocean for a maritime nation like ours. To secure our sovereign rights over the maritime resources, he promulgated the Territorial Waters and Maritime Zones Act 1974. In the recent past, our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we have obtained our rightful share in the Bay of Bengal by demarcation of our maritime boundary with our neighbors. This heralded new opportunities for Bangladesh for optimum utilization of sea resources for sustainable development of our country. Today, land-based pollutants and marine debris pose threats to coastal habitants and marine ecosystem. As mentioned by Ambassador Tariq Karim sir, The Bay of Bengal is one of the largest marine ecosystem covering over 6 million square kilometers. It has about 14,000 kilometers of shoreline and provides nutrition to about 400 million people. The coast of Bangladesh is known as the zone of multiple vulnerabilities due to the various forms of pollution. Coastal and marine water pollution in this region are mainly due to the direct discharge from ships and other marine activities. It includes direct discharge from the rivers, waste well, open dumping of solid waste. Marine pollution also arises from activities.
Can I request all participants to please mute their mic because we are having a strong feedback interfering. Kindly mute your microphone. Thank you.
So, marine pollution also arises from sea-based activities like marine transportation and offshore mineral exploration and production. Basically, today's webinar seeks to specify some responses on 4 questions from the keynote speakers and panelists. And these are, what is the present overall marine pollution state of the marine and coastal zones of Bangladesh? And what are the activities causing this marine pollution? Number 2, how are the shipping industries causing marine pollution and how effectively can we reduce discharge from ships and related industry? Third question is, what are the impacts of plastic, chemical, heavy metals, and other debris on water quality, seafood catches, people's livelihood, and public health? And finally, can we suggest a national framework, legal framework for marine and coastal zones of Bangladesh? Fortunately, to address these questions, we have today we have very prominent academicians and practitioners among us. So let me welcome you all once again to this webinar. Dear audience, I'm confident that today's session hosted by BIMRAD and Khulna University would be able to identify the root causes of marine pollution, its effect, and will suggest some countermeasures for the conservation of the marine environment. Hopefully, it will play a significant role in formulating policies, strategies, principles, and developing guidelines for further research in this field. Before I conclude, I would like to convey my heartfelt thanks to the moderator, the keynote speaker, and the panelists for being present here despite their very busy schedule. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Khulna University for taking the initiative to host this webinar jointly with BIMRAD. I also sincerely acknowledge the gracious presence of all distinguished guests and scholars. Finally, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Chief of the Naval Staff for his wholehearted support and active assistance in organizing this webinar and contributing towards the sustainable development of Maritime Bangladesh. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Admiral Mahbubul Islam, for your comments and remarks, which give us the guidelines and set the tone for the ensuing conversation that will take place. My job as a moderator is basically as a timekeeper. So let me set out at the onset that the keynote minutes each, and then hopefully we will have about 20 to 30 minutes for interactive Q&A session. With that, the bios of the moderator, of the panelists and the keynote speaker have already been circulated, so I'm not going to spend time and reading them out. Suffice it to say that they are all very distinguished and well-known researchers and academics and experts in their respective fields. I now call on Dr. Mohammad Abdul Rauf, Professor and Head of the Fisheries and Marine Resources Technology Discipline Department of Khulna University. Sir, the screen is yours to deliver your keynote presentation.
Thank you, respected moderator. May I share my slide first? Is the screen sharing? Okay.
We can't see your screen yet. Tech support from BIMRAD, please help.
Can you hear me?
No,
Yeah, we can hear, but
we can hear you,
It
but
is-
we can't see your screen.
But this.
Professor Robsa, can you please stop sharing again and again? Again, you with a new approach, can you share it again of your slides?
Sir, your internet might have been unstable. You may restart it, sir.
Yes, I think so.
the system is not working.
Yeah, maybe it's broadband deficiency. Does BIMRAD have a copy of his slides? So maybe you can project it for him and roll it forward.
Sir, we do not have the slide, sir. Maybe we'll wait.
Until we get it going, may I suggest that you just start speaking, use the slides as your talking points and carry on, sir. Try once after restart. The way to go.
Sir, Professor Rope will need a few minutes to restart his PC and everything. Can we go to the next speaker if you allow, sir?
But they are supposed to be responding.
Yes, sir. I understand. So
you
we may wait
start
for
with
another
more.
2-3 minutes, sir, if you allow, sir.
Unless he gives the keynote presentation, then we cannot have the panel discussion.
Yeah,
Sir, we'll wait, sir. We'll wait for another few minutes.
Anyways, in the meantime, I'll share something of what we are doing at the Center for Bay of Bengal Studies. We have had a couple of events, one sponsored by the Japanese Embassy, the other by, we are preparing for is being sponsored by the US Embassy. And we have done one exercise jointly with the think tank in India on the Sundarbans. That was funded by the British, formerly known as DFID, now known as the FCDO. Because on the Sundarbans, and it's a consuming passion with me. As I said, around about 202 years ago, the total extent of the Sundarban was about 20,089 square kilometers. And then in 1954, it was 17,745 square kilometers. Today, it is 9,176 square kilometers. You can see the attrition that has been taking and the exponential increase of the rate of attrition, basically because of man-made activities. And secondly, I attribute it also because we have partitioned the ecosystem that was the Sundarban into East and West Sundarban, which is absurd because commons do not care a twit for man's laws and man's boundaries. They have their own natural laws and they are boundaryless. We have to respect those natural laws. But we, being the dominant species, think we can control nature and make nature subservient to us. So what we are seeing today is nature giving us all a solid kick in our backsides. It will take a long time to roll it back because it has taken several centuries for us to arrive at this state. As I said, just in 2 centuries, we have lost so much of the Sundarbans. I posed this question to a senior American diplomat who was calling on me at my office about 2 weeks ago. And I told them that, are you aware or have you visited the Sundarbans? Oh, yes, it's very beautiful. I said, what function does it play in helping us keep, it's like a force shield. You know, those who watch Star Trek, you know, when Captain Picard says force shield up, it's the Sundarban is like that force shield. It keeps the wind at bay or slows down the lethal impact of the wind. It keeps the tidal wave bore at bay. And I said, imagine there is no Sundarban because most of the countries on the Bay of Bengal have lost their Sundarbans. What would be the effect on Bangladesh? He looked at me a little startled. And then he said, your coastline would be very different. So I said, okay, now imagine that what we have today is going to disappear in 70 to 80 years or something like that. At this rate of attrition that is happening in the last 7 decades. And he said, your coastline would be vastly different. I said, okay, then you extrapolate that to how much population we would have around that time, how much of the habitable land, habitat they would lose, how much of the economic activities they would lose, how many of them would become displaced and become a burden on the state, and they would not remain with the state. It will not be our problem anymore. That will become your problem. It will become the world's problem. And he had not expected me to talk so candidly and bluntly, but it made him pause. You see, sometimes we need to give our interlocutors who are all living in an airy-fairy world that everything will be okay. We have ingenuity. Man has survived so many different calamities. They will come out of it. But nature has a limit to its sustaining capacity. It's not, it is not something that we can keep on tapping without giving nature the ability to renew itself. Nature has an incredible ability to renew itself. Like our human bodies have a capability of renewing ourselves. But we have to give it some rest and time for it to renew itself. Is the speaker back? I don't see him on the screen yet.
Sir, excuse me, sir. If you allow me, I'm Commodore Arif, retired.
Yes.
I had been working as the Director General Shipping previously, and now working as an independent consultant and also taking classes in different places. Sir, in response to
Okay,
the point that you have raised.
Why don't you start off with your session, with your what remarks you have on this, and perhaps Dr. Rauf can join in whenever he is free. And I would still suggest to him that if he can't get the thing in presentation of slides working, let him deliver the lecture as if he's delivering a lecture without the slide projector in his classroom working.
Okay.
Sir, yes, sir. We have already informed, sir.
Yes. Okay.
Respected,
So,
respected moderator.
yes, Commodore Ariful Islam.
Respected moderator, this is Professor Rauf from Khulna University, but I'm now joining from another laptop with entitled Ronnie Golder.
Okay, can you join
You can
now?
rename.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, fine, join. Okay, Ronnie Golder, I see you. Excellent, I can see you now.
Share another. I can share another.
Yes, now it's okay.
Okay. Okay. Share দিতে হবে? Okay, respected moderator, I will like to start my lecture because it's taking time. By this time, if my slides ready, I will share with the audience.
Then can you start or you want us? You
Yes.
want to wait?
Yes.
Okay, okay, good.
I think it's better I should start now. Sorry for the interruption from my side for a while.
Go ahead, these things happen. I always have problem sharing my screen.
Yeah. So, respected moderator, today's session chair, today's different speakers from different organizations and faculties from different universities, students also from different universities, scientists also from different institutions, research institutions, and organizers of BIMRAD. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so today my keynote speaking title is Marine Pollution, an Emerging Concern for Bangladesh. So we know what is marine pollution, and in UN clause they deliver a definition, the introduction by men, directly or indirectly, of substances or energy to the marine environment, which results different hazards, different hindrances, impairment, and reduction some things. And if we look at types of marine pollution, then there are several types of pollution like eutrophication, acidification, toxin, plastics, heavy metals, etc. And if we look at the sources of marine pollution, then we can see there are two kinds of sources like point sources and non-point sources. And we can, if you don't mind, dear moderator, can you see my slide now?
Yeah, now it is okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And okay, so these are the different sources of pollution. And this flow chart also showing how the different pollutions come from different sources and goes to the coastal and marine zone of Bangladesh. And if we look at the global perspective of marine pollution, then global plastic production, it is around 350 million tons in 2017, where 16 million tons are expected to go in ocean by 2030 and 32 million tons by 2050. And 46,000 pieces of floating plastic per meter square found in ocean surface in the northern United coast. 10,000 million gallons of sea waste and millions of tons of solid waste goes to ocean annually. Human activities release 5 times as much mercury and 17 times as much lead. It's derived from natural sources. 3.25 million metric tons of oil discharged to ocean annually. 10 billion tons of ballast water with invasives discharges to ocean annually. So these are some of the data which I got from different published articles and representing the global perspective of marine pollution. But if you look at the marine pollution perspective in Bay of Bengal, we don't have very consolidated data, but some of the scattered data I tried to accumulate in my slide. So it is, we can see 37,187 million ton pesticides and 2.6 million tons of fertilizer per year utilized in our country. And among these, 25% can be anticipated to end up in the BOP. Shrimp culture in Cox's Bazar uses 620 tons of urea. And among these, 15 tons of waste daily goes to the ocean. Lead, cadmium, iron, copper in the eastern coast are relatively 3,027, 319, and 122 times higher than the standard seawater. In terms of plastic pollution, if we look at the status in BOB, then at present, plastic considered as a hotspot in Asia, and BOB receives about 2 lakh tons of plastic per year from Bangladesh. And if we look at the solid waste, then it generates 0.43 kg per person per day, and among these, 80% are plastic waste, which goes to the ocean. Mismanaged waste is around 89%. Among these, 2.5% is plastic waste and goes to the ocean. And there is also a statistics, 7,928 billion microbits we can see, which goes to our ocean. So this is a special distribution of heavy metals in Bay of Bengal. And we can see the distribution of copper, zinc, lead, nickel, cadmium, mercury, arsenic in the Bay of Bengal. And most of cases, you will see the metals are very much concentrated near the Chittagong coast. And if we look at the heavy metal pollution in the Bay of Bengal in terms of water from shipping activities, so you can see the average concentration of different heavy metals in this slide. But I just put WHO recommended concentration, but this is for drinking water. And this is slide showing the heavy metals concentration in soil. And this is particularly important one because this slide addressing the average concentrations of heavy metal in seawater of the BOB with compared to the standard concentration of heavy metal at 3.5% salinity. So we can see lead, copper, cadmium, iron, they exceeded the limit. And this slide showing the chronological scenario, hierarchical scenario of heavy metals in algae, water, and the sediment of Bay of Bengal. Now I'm going to present oil spill pollution in the BOB. We have land sources oil pollution and ship sources oil pollution. And from land sources, it is 200 to 300 tons per year. And ship sources, we can see from different component, we got different quantity each year. But if we look at total, then it is around 1,500 to 2,500 tons per year we discharge to ocean. In addition to that, there are some accidental spillage as we experienced in 2014 in Shela River of Sundarban. Ocean acidification is also a big concern in global perspective. And if we look at the increase in ocean acidity from pre-industrial levels to today is 26%, and the current rate of acidification is over 10 times faster than any time in the last 55 million years. So we can get an idea that how the ocean acidification also plays a significant impact in ocean environment or ocean ecosystem. So from this slide, you can see the how pH changed from 1850 to 2100. It's a predicted model. And for ocean acidification in Bangladesh, especially major concern is reported concern is as coral. And from one article, we got around 26 coral species may be lost in the next 11 years due to the ocean acidification, which reported in 2015 in a scientific journal. In addition to that, mollusks are one of the group which is most sensitive to ocean acidification. So these are some of this slide showing some of the impacts of marine pollution in terms of atmospheric level, in oceanic level, in socioeconomic level. And now I'm going to describe about the effects of that pollution. So if we look at the effect on organism of marine pollution, then generally we can see genotoxicity, carcinogenity, neurotoxicity, that sorts of effects from marine pollutants. In terms of oil pollution exposure can cause chronic disease, and toxic chemicals are identified in the breast milk of mothers in coastal area. Eating of plastic contaminated fish by people may cause cancer or congenital disabilities or disorders. Marine mammals like dolphin, whales suffering from liver disease, digestive and nervous system problems, etc. If we look at floating plastic bags, they are also creating big pollution in ocean, and sea turtles are attracting by these bags, which collapse their digestive system. Marine birds get to clog due to lead and zinc can reduce the growth of seashells and oysters. If we look at the heavy metals, it has also a serious impact on human kidney. Lead has been associated with pathological changes. High intake of inorganic arsenic can create cancer. Manganese affects the central nervous system. So this slide also addressing some of the effect from liquid, oil, lubricant, grease, TBT, etc. And here you can see more effect from metals and gaseous substances in marine environment. And this slide also showing the effect from solids like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, dioxins, etc., and harmful microbes. So, I just try to accumulate all that research articles, and I try to show in one slide that what sorts of research we did in terms of marine pollution in Bangladesh. So if we look at metal, which is seriously worked by different authors, and you can see a series of reference when we see the metals which address the metals in shipbreaking areas, BOB, coastal rivers, and distribution of metals in BOB. And there are some articles which address metals in marine, shrimp, lobster, fish, algae, but a very insignificant number of publication or scientific article we can see which address oil, grease, and nutrient, and polychlorinated biphenyls, plastic. There are some articles we can see regarding plastic pollution. There is a pesticide, solid waste, acidification also. But if we look at from this slide gives us a message that scientists from Bangladesh, they extensively work on metals and the effect of metals in different organisms, or abundance or distribution of metals in the Bay of Bengal, especially in the coastal zone of Bay of Bengal. But other parts, such as acidification or other pollution relevant work is scarce in our country. So this is a slide which just quantify how many paper we got in different field of marine pollution in our country. So finally, I just try to point out some of the research gaps, like which I think we need to think about, or we need to consider for further progressing the marine pollution relevant work in our country. The first thing is quantification and characterization of different pollutant in commercially important species, and distribution of these pollutants in the coastal water of BOB, pathway of these pollutants and their impact on food chain, and prediction of pollution scenarios in BOB, because in fact it's not possible to regular monitoring the pollution. But if we have a model, then we can predict pollution scenarios in the BOB. And we also need management and policy interventions in controlling point and non-point pollution sources in our country. We also need to build up awareness so that we can reduce the pollution, we can reduce the sources of pollution which hinders the Bay of Bengal. And finally, I should say that we need coordinated research with a joint venture work with different universities or different research institutions or any other interested research institutions. So that's all from my side. Thank you, dear audience, for your patience hearing.
Sir, you are muted, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rauf. I compliment you that you've not only finished in much under 20 minutes, you made up for some of the lost time that we had because of technical glitches. You raise a number of questions in my mind as we were talking. There are all these different elements that come in from point and non-point sources and flow into our waterways and marine commons. I don't think any study has been done as to how they interact with each other. So we need to do, as you have said, we need to focus on each type of pollutant from non-point and point sources. And then we also need to do further study on how they interact with each other when they mix with water, because one of the fundamental lessons of chemistry is when two or more elements come and collide with each other, they produce something else. And how does that affect the bay? So, you know, there is a whole vast array of areas in which we need to delve into deeper, and about which our policymakers need to know. Because I think a fundamental problem is that even the different departments dealing with different elements of pollution work in silos. They are not actually meeting, consulting, or sharing information with each other. So I'll leave it at that. Perhaps you could address, or others can address this point later. I now call on the first discussant, Commodore Said Ariful Islam, former DG Shipping, to kindly make his remarks or presentation. 10 minutes, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of speaking to this August gathering. So now, Bangladesh Institute of Maritime Research and Development, Fisheries and Marine Resource and Technology Discipline, Khulna University. Respected moderator, Chair BIMRAD, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. The topic on which I am going to discuss is pollution by shipping industry in the marine and coastal zone. I shall share my screen. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So to speak on the subject, I would like to mention some parameters. Like from different researches, it is evident that approximately about 6,000 tons of crude oil are spilled within the port area of Bangladesh every year. Another 50,000 tons of crude oil and wastewater effluents are introduced to the port area every year. So this is what actually happens through many different sources. The sources are refineries, handling loss, garbage, discharge from tankers, merchant ships, and many other shipping activities like vessel navigation activities, shipyard, ship production or repair activities, and ship breaking activities. So this is the general sources of pollution in the coastal area of Bangladesh. When you talk about the marine environment, it encompasses the entire marine area of Bangladesh, the sea area of Bangladesh. To divide it, we can broadly divide it in two different segments. One is the coastal area and the inland area. While talking about the coastal area, the most pollution happens in and around the Chittagong coast, and that includes different places. The pie chart shown below actually encompasses the overall scenario of marine pollution that includes the different places starting from Madambibirhat up to the down below to Sitakundo and the related areas. So these are the places where the marine pollution takes place very often. Now, the kind of pollution that we talk about are land-based and marine-based. The marine-based pollutions generally happens through shipping and offshore mining and extraction activities, illegal dumping at sea, discarding of fishing gears, shipyard and shipbreaking activities. If we take an overall picture of the ship, and then we can find that there are pollution above the ship and also under the ship. When it goes above, it pollutes the overall air quality of the environment. When it goes below, it encompasses the water quality of the ocean. So in case of polluting the ocean, it starts from accidental spillage, emission, exhaust gas, waste and garbage, oil spill, ballast water discharge, anti-fouling paint, bilge water, and etc. So these are the few pictures which shows the pollution activities in and around Chittagong coast. Now, gentlemen, one of the very important document, the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ship, is MARPOL. MARPOL actually gives a directives that how the crew on board should behave in respect to handling the oil and other chemicals. The MARPOL prescribes that the prevention of the oil pollution is the responsibility of the ship's crew. And for all ships, MARPOL has given a set of equipment that has to be maintained on board. For all kinds of ship, these are oil filter equipment, 15 ppm alarm arrangements, standard discharge connection, And for tankers, the list of equipments are longer. It includes oil water interface detector, crude oil washing system, oil discharge monitoring and control system, cargo and ballast pumping, engine room, bilge handling tank to slop tank pumping and piping arrangements. To control of discharge of oil under MARPOL Annex 1 regulation, no ship are allowed to pump out their bilges anywhere they feel like. The regulations are very strict, and the ship, when en route, can only discharge the oily water or anything that are prescribed by MARPOL. The only treated oil water mixture which is processed through an approved oil filtering equipment fulfilling the requirement stated in regulation 14 is used to discharge the treated effluent mixture. The oil ppm in the treated effluent without dilution must not exceed 15 parts per million. The oily mixture being treated in the oil filtering equipment is only taken from the engine room and not generating from cargo holds. The oily mixture is not mixed with fuel tanks or cargo tanks oil residues. The ship is more than 12 nautical miles from the nearest land. Gentlemen, these 12 nautical miles is specified for the cargo ships, not for the tankers. For the tankers, the regulations are little different. In case of tanker, the ship has to be beyond 50 nautical miles from the coastlines so that it doesn't pollute the ocean in a scale that harms the marine environment. The total quantity of oil discharged into the sea does not exceed for existing tankers. Existing tankers means there are a regulation that the ship should have the double bottom and double hull scheme. And that was the ship constructed before 1979 had one kind of instruction, and after 1979 the regulation changed, and now the ship can discharge oil water which contains 1 per 30,000 of the total quantity of the specific cargo of which the residue form a part. The tanker has in operational oil discharge monitoring and control system and a stop tank arrangement. So whatever the arrangement the ship is maintaining, it has to follow the specific rules and regulation given by the MARPOL. Each of the ships, so whenever we are constructing a ship of 400 gross tonnage and above, cargo ships, and if we are constructing oil tanker, 150 gross tonnage and above, should maintain certain inspection. There are different kinds of inspection, like initial survey. In case of initial survey, all the equipments are prescribed by the MARPOL has to be present in the ship. In annual survey, the things are checked by the class surveyor and they issue the IOPP certificate. IOPP means International Oil Pollution and Prevention Certificate. Intermediate survey are also carried out before the expiry of the annual certificate. They also conduct the renewal survey, additional survey, and condition assessment scheme. Condition assessment scheme is done almost at the end of ship's life. If the surveyors are in opinion that the ship is still in a position to conduct the trade, in that case, the conditional assessment, after the conditional assessment, the ship is allowed to do the trade following the MARPOL regulation. There are many other certificates which needs to be obtained by each. Yes, please.
If you can wind up in 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. Sir, I will not go into the detail of the rules and regulation being present here. I shall go into some other part like the oil record book. Each of the ships are supposed to have oil record book, and in the oil record book, they have to exactly record how the oil were discharged outboard. And if this is not done, the ship is supposed to be detained. And this detention is the responsibility of the surveyor of Department of Shipping. I just would like to focus on one point, that is in Bangladesh, we seriously lack in the monitoring and control issues. If the monitoring and issues are looked after well, probably the amount of discharge being done in the coastal area of Bangladesh can be saved. If we look at the overall statistics of Bangladesh, we maintain something around 25,000 of registered ships, and beyond registry, there are more than lakhs. All the ships are supposed to maintain certain rules and regulation in conducting their activities in respect to discharging oil into the water. Discharging means the natural residue that comes out of their own operation. But the ships, mostly the merchant ships, are somehow complying with these instructions. The domestic ships are not following the MARPOL compliances. So if we need a compliant environment in our Bangladesh, if we want to see that all ships are maintaining the rules and regulations, the compliance issues has to be improved further. Here I would like to say that there are huge number of rules and regulation available in the country. The International Maritime Organization has also introduced many rules and regulations, but these are laxly complied in many countries like Bangladesh. If we are complying with all those rules and regulations, if we compel the ships coming to Bangladesh, the merchant ships, as we can see that more than 4,000 merchant ships are visiting Bangladesh each year. If these ships are complying with the rules and regulations, probably we'll be able to maintain our sea area in a better way. Lastly, finally, I would like to mention one more point, that is Bangladesh is having approximately about 80 merchant ships in our fleet. Out of these 80, around 12 ships are owned by Bangladesh Shipping Corporation. The shipping corporation is also operating some oil tankers. Those are operating domestically, just going to outer anchorage and coming back. The MARPOL regulation says that no bilges can be discharged within 12 to discharge the bilges for the tankers. It has to go beyond 50 nautical mile, but these regulations are often overlooked, and this is the reason why the complaint of pollution comes every time. So if we want to make a compliance, if we want to ensure that the sea is not polluted by the ships visiting Bangladesh, we also need to comply the same regulation on our own ship, and then make a slogan that the ships, the marine area of Bangladesh can be kept out of the pollution by all means. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Commodore Islam, for your very, very informative expose of this particular problem. It's very clear that while MARPOL has a prescriptive role, the monitoring and enforcement of the rules it produces is in a gray zone, internationally as well as in the national domestic sphere. And perhaps we need to examine how that can be enforced, but that is a failure in or failing in many other sectors. I go now to the next speaker, the panelist, Dr. Muhammad Ghulam Sarwar, is Professor, Fisheries and Marine Resources of the Technology Discipline Department of Khulna University. Professor Sarwar, the screen is yours.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my slide. Share screen. Host disable participants. Share. So how can I share my slide here? Because share screen just showed me the host disable participant screen sharing. I'm not able to share my
host. Please make him a co-host, otherwise he cannot share. And please do the same for the next speaker if he has slides.
Yes, sir.
No, still.
Yeah, now you need to open your file.
No, the same thing. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
We
And
can
it's still
see the
We can see your screen. So you have to select the file on
okay.
the
Sure. Okay, understand.
It's written Mahmoud Hassan's screen. We are viewing now Mahmoud Hassan's screen. Is it Mahmoud Hassan's or
Is it okay now?
we can see the screen of Mahmoud Hassan? Is it Dr.
No. I'm server on the screen. I'm now as this server.
Okay, sir.
Hmm.
Mahmoud Hassan, is it your screen? Can you just whose screen is this one? What I see now.
Yeah, it says Mahmoudullah Hassan screen. Maybe the computer is somebody else's, but it's.
Mahmoud Hassan, are you here? Like we can see this screen.
Yeah,
It's written
Professor Sarwar, are you using your own computer or somebody else's laptop?
No, from my own computer.
Oh, so but we are seeing the screen of another person.
Yeah, maybe.
And
Professor Sarwar, please.
Oh, yeah,
try
it's
again.
okay.
Try again.
Okay. Right now, okay. I think.
all right, I think yes,
Yeah.
your screen is coming. And just before you start, the next speaker, if you have a screen to share, please work on it now so that when you come on board, you can start straight away.
Okay,
Yes,
good morning,
carry
everybody.
on.
So thank you very much for invitation to talk today. And you can see the title of my talk here. And I'm just, okay, I'm going to talk about, initially about the trace element and what they are. And in little about why these elements are toxic and how come they toxic to the living beings. And finally, I'll finish off with the activities of Khulna University on marine pollution. So I hope it will take 10 minutes to cover all these issues. So let's start on trace element. So trace element, actually the micronutrients, is also considered as the dietary elements, and it is very indispensable elements actually for the biological system. But sometimes it's also, the considered the dietary elements. It is not, they are not toxic at the low concentration, but toxic at very high concentration. On the other hand, heavy metal, they have, the high atomic number, and they are toxic even in the very low concentration. And they include transition metal, metalloids, lanthanides, and acetinides that are available in the periodic table. So, this figure actually shows that the bioaccumulation of heavy metal due to the mining and industrial activities. And we can see that the connectivity between even the human being, aquatic, aquatic animals, as well as their sources also. And if we look at the source of the metal into the aquatic ecosystem, then we can see here a lot of sources actually. There are 10 sources. All sources actually are, the anthropogenic activities, due to the anthropogenic activities. And finally, all sorts of metal, they reach to the aquatic ecosystem. And that's why in the aquatic ecosystem, these metals are taking part in biochemical reaction, volatilization, dissolve or particulate form, and sometimes there is suspension also, finally uptake by the living organism in the aquatic system. And if we see the source, this trace element, even in the, the fossil fuel contains around 50 metals in coal, 35 in crude oil, 30 in the fuel oil, as well as 20 in the gasoline. Though this type of studies was conducted in 1983. So burning of this fossil fuel actually mobilize and emission this heavy metal and I mean into the atmosphere and eventually reach to the ocean. And if we see, I mean, this table that indicate how anthropogenic activities actually induce the concentration of heavy metal in our environment. Even in case of arsenic, the natural source that we look at is 12, then it's around 1.5 times greater when the anthropogenic sources, if we look. So cadmium, it's almost 5 times. Copper, it's around 1.2 times, but the alarming is the lead, it's around 30 times higher in the anthropogenic sources. And nickel almost 2, and zinc almost 5 times higher due to the anthropogenic, the activities. So the water body actually is, is assessed based on 5 biological indicators according to the European Water Framework Directive. The one is phytoplankton, then macrophytes, phytobenthos, benthic environments, and fish alongside the other chemical and hydromorphological quality elements. But the mollusk and fish are the most and extensively used organism as the bioindicator of the metal pollution in the sediment as well as the water also. And what's the the fate of their the remobilization of this metal? So because the metal is non-biodegradable in nature, that's why they are not be metabolized into less toxic compound, and they redistribute throughout the water column as well as accumulated in the sediment consumed by biota. And sediments actually considered as they constitute a long-term source of contamination to the wave, food wave as well as the food chain also because of their desorption and remobilization the process. So this figure also illustrate, how come some, the heavy metal can get accumulate or bioaccumulation and biomagnification, as well as in sometimes we find that some fish, those has, some specific parasites, they act like a biofilter in the intestine. And they also, reduce the heavy metal content in the water in some extent, as well as they also reduce the heavy metal content for bioavailability also. So the biological effect actually of this, I think the metal, it induce a wide range of biological effect, from being essential for living organism to being lethal one also. And they also disturb the organism's growth, metabolism, reproduction, and that is the consequence to the entire, the trophic chain. And they are actually the hazardous for function of natural ecosystem and human health also because of their, their toxic effect, long persistence, bioaccumulative process, and biomagnification also. So this, the chart actually, the indicate the metal bioavailability. Bioavailability means when the metal available for biological system, and it's also depends on the physical and chemical factor as well as biological factors, geochemical factors also. Biological factors like metal assimilation efficiency. It depends on species to species. Feeding strategy also. It's also species specific, size and age and so on. So this bioavailability actually, the organic compound of metal could be more bioavailable than the ionic form. If this, I mean the metal just combined with biological compound, then they, in some extent, they are more lethal than any other ones. So for example, the organic mercurial compound are lipid soluble and they penetrate quickly the lipid membrane and increasing the toxicity compared to the mercury chloride, which are not lipid soluble. So like this way. And on the other hand, the binding of metal with some bacterial extracellular polymerase, they also, sometimes reduce the bioavailability. But if the bacterial extracellular polymers combined with the metal, if the size is bigger, then it easily settle down to the sediment. But if the particle size is very small, they again, enter the redistribution or reallocation system through the, the organisms. And if we look, this figure, this is represented in one simple, the animal, the cell, and you see here, this cell, they have the plasma membrane, and we know the plasma membrane is very selective permeable. That's why if some, the metal combined with a hydrophobic biological compound, they easily penetrate through this plasma membrane, because the plasma membrane consists of phospholipid bilayer. They're also the hydrophobic in nature. And if the metal is combined with the hydrophilic compound, then they will easily penetrate through the peripheral protein. This protein actually contain the channel or pump and so on. So they can easily, penetrate inside the cell. So once they penetrate this, the compound molecule inside the cell, the first target actually the mitochondria, because we know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So the mitochondria, in the mitochondria, this heavy metal altered the electron transport chain, and this electron transport chain is very crucial for the living cell, because they convert the FADH2, NADH2 that is produced in the TCA cycle. It's converted into the ATP. That's a biological fuel also. And on the other hand, in the
please wind up in 2 minutes.
Sorry, yeah. Okay. So, okay. Then, in the other hand, in plant cell, they also interact with the chloroplast, and eventually they just hinder the system of photosynthesis. So all of these things actually induce to produce the reactive oxygen species inside the cell. If the reactive oxygen species is increase inside the cell, then it leads to the cell apoptosis. And another triggering factor is that it act on directly to the transcription factor. And transcription factor actually, they transcribe the DNA into the messenger RNA. Finally, it produces the protein. So in that case, the transcription, the transcription factor, if they act on the transcription factor, the differential, the expression of gene is normally occurred in the cell. And that's why if we look the toxicity effect of this metal, then we can find that most of the this metal, even the high concentration, and in case of for heavy metal, they inhibit the enzyme activities that is involved in cellular respiration, even involved in protein synthesis and cell division. And they also alter the histological changes in fish and crustacean also. Even they also inhibit the antioxidant enzyme activities also. And the metal cation binding to biological molecule induce oxidative damage, and it's also hamper the normal functions. Even excess free copper ion promote formation of reactive oxygen species that induce DNA damage, mitochondrial dysfunction, and membrane lipid destruction also. And the free zinc ion activate apoptotic pathways and free radical generation enzymes also. So overexposure of other metal, including arsenic, cadmium, and so on, are also known to induce damage through the similar pathways, as we see here, for copper and zinc. I mean the elements. I mean they're doing in the similar way. So, if we look at this picture, that we see then how do these, I mean, the heavy metal does the make effect on the DNA and macromolecule also, because if the heavy metal penetrate inside the cell, they directly interact with the disruption of DNA methylation, and consequently that cause DNA damage, and it's called the genotoxicity, as well as they also inhibit the protein synthesis, as well as they cause also the protein degradation. As well, they also, inhibit the cytochrome C, I mean, these pathways, and finally lead to the apoptosis of the cell. And in some cases, they're directly in the Sorry.
Please
Okay.
wind up. Thank you.
Okay, so lipid then membrane also damage through the the lipid peroxidation also. So alteration in the cell signaling also, they also interact with the signaling. So like this way, but what about the, I mean, the genotoxicity? To avoid the metal induced toxicity, normally biological system, all these pathways is tightly regulated. But if, I mean, that concentration, I mean, become greater, then the problem is that many species, I mean, respond physiologically to elevate metal by increasing synthesis of metallothioneins, MT, the protein, that is the metallothioneins. And in another case, many invertebrates also exhibit elevated gene expression of the other antioxidant relevant enzymes such as glutathione's transferase, GST gene, and superoxidase gene. These genes are very quickly they expressed inside the cell and even inside the organs. And gene expression approach to evaluate the metal effect represent the powerful, I mean, the tools right now, because recently these tools is extensively used in worldwide to evaluate, the stress of the organism by means of, the pollution of heavy metal, even not only heavy metal, trace metal also. So, okay, as of today, if we see that some the studies have been already reported on the heavy metal in the Bay of Bengal, and I found that most of the folk, they focused on the region of Chittagong and Cox's Bazar. And the one case I found that the sample was collected in 1996, one experiment, and the shrimp and maybe lobster were collected from southwest of South Passage, east of source of no ground, and Meghna River estuary also. So unfortunately, I found that is, the southwestern region, including Sundarban, is highly ignored till now. There are some reasons behind it, obviously, some reason also. So the folk from different institutes, from Dhaka University, Chittagong University, even Joshua University, they did their study. All of this study, they just, I mean, done in collaboration with the other institute like Bangladesh Atomic Energy Commission, and even the overseas institute, overseas university also in collaboration. But the problem to be ignored or not ignored, actually, the less attentive in the Sundarban or in southwestern part of Bangladesh because of the accessibility, or to access to collect the sample, as well as the capability of the institute in this region. Because so far I know, Bangladesh Atomic Energy Commission, they have atomic absorption spectrophotometer since long while ago. But
Can you please conclude now, because we
okay. So the Khulna University now is capable, because from this year we have atomic absorption spectrophotometer and ICE, PAS like this, and even we have the real-time PCR. That's why we can easily determine the gene expression, and we can analyze the effect of this heavy metal research and so on. So right now we are doing the experiment. We have a small grant, and we are to study on the heavy metal, and we already collected some sample from this location. I mean, along through the Rupsa River and from the Sundarban, and we just, this type of analyzing is being conducted now. So we'll get the result hope very soon. So that's all from my side, and thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. I apologize to the panelists, because I know that they have a vast wealth of information that needs sharing.
Sure.
It is one of the disadvantages of a discussion like this, that we have to intrude into the flow of thoughts when they are speaking. I've had to face that problem myself. So please, I apologize for being rude. Thank you for winding up, and for extremely informative. It was extremely informative. Obviously, there's much more that you can say about it, and we will have to continue this conversation.
Okay,
now,
thank you.
I think before I go to the next speaker, I seek indulgence of the chair, because we are actually close to winding up. So if I give 10 minutes to the next panelist, we will be finishing our program. So can we extend this, because we had technical glitches and everything, by say 15 minutes? So at least give some time for Q's and A's. Thank you. Next panelist, please come on board. Dr. Wahidul Alam, Associate Professor of Chittagong University, Department of Oceanography. And 10 minutes, please.
Thank you,
Sorry,
moderator.
but I'll probably be more rude than I was before. I don't want to be. Please, thank you.
Thank you, moderator and respective teachers. Now I just want to open my slide. I think you see my slide.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks to BIMRAD for inviting me to give me a lecture about my published article regarding marine pollution prevention in Bangladesh. I am Dr. M. Wahidul Alam. I am Associate Professor, Department of Oceanography at University of Chittagong. As I have completed my PhD about marine environmental protection law from Ocean University of China, for this I have included some law, how we can implement the comprehensive national regulations for controlling marine pollution in Bangladesh. So if I have a time limit, so I just go to the slide next. So the outline of my lecture is the introduction of marine environment and their pollution and their impacts, examining the present our domestic law, and analyze some international regional regulations, how we can implement, and a way forward. So before discussing about marine pollution, we should know about the importance of marine environment and their protection. We know marine environment is a vital diversity of marine biota, and it is also called the lungs of the earth. It's a natural cultural heritage. It produces the 70% oxygen. It's a vast resource for humankind. It's also a place of tourism, mineral extraction, transportation, recreation, etc. Bangladesh is the largest delta in the world, we know, and which is mainly formed by the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna river system. So the main environment of Bangladesh is also enriched with marine resources, including good stocks of fish. As the country also has an excellent marine heritage and have an interest in blue economy, so prevention and control of marine pollution is significantly important, and interlinked, because generally protection of the marine environment generally considered as protection from marine pollution. So let's see the marine pollution. Marine pollution is a common term. So we know it has a devastating impacts of our land and sea. According to the GISAM, it's a group of expert group about marine pollution. They recognize the 5 sources of marine pollution, whereas land-based sources of marine pollution is dominant in our country, including the whole world. So in Bangladesh, we see that the heavy metals is the priority parameters in the coastal pollution or marine pollution. I saw some presenter also give their lectures about the heavy metals pollution. So I just skip the regarding this. So what is the scope of the learning from the lectures? We know about the marine environment importance and their protection, and marine environment protection is generally linked with the marine pollution control. Then how we can implement the national law to protect the marine pollution. We just go forward. So some already presenters discuss about the point source and non-point source of the main problems of land-based sources of pollution. And actually in Bangladesh, we see there are 2 types of pollution. One is land-based and sea-based. So my previous presenter already discussed about these topics. And in 2004, the oil spill scenario in our land is in our land and ship we just show that about 1,500 to 2,500 tons per year oil spill in our country since in 2004. And in my article, I have also one article regarding the heavy metal pollution in Chittagong coast. In my article, I saw that the aluminum and iron are the leading concentrated heavy metals in our Chittagong coast due to the shipbreaking pollution in our coast. And the marine litter and plastics, you know everybody something about this, because each year tons of plastics and other litters are tossed into our rivers, left on beaches and dumped overboard from recreational and commercial vessels. So where it is originated? It originates from the fishing gear, shipping waste, littering at beaches, plastic granules, uncontrolled landfill, and land-based litter, which is ending into our ocean actually. So what are the major impacts? The previous presenter actually showed that in brief the impacts. So major impacts of marine pollutions are it's endangering species, marine biota, including plankton, mammals, fish eggs and larvae, seabirds, benthos, etc. It makes a eutrophication. It also has a negative impacts on human health. It also makes some microbial disease contaminants, because I am doing some research in presently. I saw that last week I also visited the Kornopuli. I see that the Kornopuli is polluted by the microbial pollution. It's also very dangerous for our coastal people and the riverside people. So why importance of marine pollution control? Because marine pollution is emerging threat due to the devastating impacts to develop sustainable marine environment by implementing blue economy, constant trade and continues to endanger the marine ecosystem, necessities of marine environmental protection and conservation for achieving SDG, because target 14.1 gives the priorities to prevent and reduction of pollution by 2025. So what is the main constraints of marine pollution control in our country? Because we have some constraints, like some our people do not have an idea about the marine pollution concept. We have some lackings of the national legislation, because our legislations are some are too old, some are updated but not yet enacted in enforcement. Transboundary problems is also a main problem in our country. Lack of exclusive ministry or department, lack of scientific research, lack of financial funding, institutional incapacity, lack of institutional coordination, conflict with sectoral policies, lack of national marine data center, non-punitive approach of laws, economic matter, lack of scientific specific regional framework. So in our country, we have some existing legal frameworks, but they are not directly work with the marine pollution control. For this, I suggest Bangladesh needs to enact a comprehensive marine pollution prevention law, because there is no uniformity among the national laws. Lots of environmental laws is working in Bangladesh, but they have not any specific section for marine pollution control. Though recently the Maritime Act 2018 draft already, they have some provisions about the marine environment, but they are not also satisfactory matter. So we have some relevant marine pollution authorities and policies, we know, but they are also not capable to control the marine pollution directly. Suppose the Department of Environment, they are working with the environmental pollution in land. The Department of Shipping, they have some law. Suppose the Marine Environment Conservation Act in 2004 they established, but yet not enact in our enforcement. It's also a draft. So in the meantime, I think that we should implement some international law. So some and how we can implement, I'll go forward for this. Some international institutions like United Nations Environmental Program, IUC, GSAM, etc., are working for the sustainable use of marine resources, including marine environmental protection. Generally, international regulations, how they work? They work under the international conventions, rules of customary or law, or general principles of law. And besides, there are some international principles like sustainable development, ICZM, EIA, polluters principle, polluters pay principle, cleaner products, etc. So for control the marine pollution, we can address this principle under the scientific, economic, or management problem solving. So Bangladesh have some ratified some international law, but they are not still go for entry into force. Suppose it is found that UNCLOS 1982 is the only global agreement which is addressing the prevention of marine pollution. However, Bangladesh ratifies the convention in 2001, rather enforcement, yet not as enforcement. In addition,
2 minutes more, please.
In addition, existing global arrangement is unsatisfactory because several global agreed regional agreements and protocols has no potential outcomes in regional level. We have not yet actually no regional framework. We have some regional organization like a SARC, but they are failed to accomplish any significant achievements in building cooperation in such a serious issue like marine pollution. It is noted that there is no any existing specific regional regulations to control marine pollution in the Bay of Bengal region. Rather, some regional regulatory instruments. In this regard, this lecture discussed the sub-regional problems in the Bay of Bengal region to find out the lack of major issues. So, what is the regional framework? So, if we want to implement regional framework, we need to implement the regional cooperation, diplomatic meetings, partnership building, dispute settlement, political negotiation, etc. So we have some regional activities to control the land-based marine pollution directly. In the South Asia, suppose Bay of Bengal program in 1979, but they are working to control marine pollution indirectly. South Asia Cooperative Environmental Program, they are also not actually specifically considerable for the land-based marine pollution. We have the Colombo workshop on land-based marine control in 1997. It was organized by the United Nations Environmental Program. They have some positive impacts, but they have some institutional activity working for implementation. And the Bay of Bengal large marine ecosystem in 2009, they mainly seeks to create a regional initiatives to address the issues of the coastal communities in the Bay of Bengal region, but they're not working also directly for marine pollution. So as I mentioned, Bangladesh has various constraints, including lots of limitations for marine pollution control. So it is argued that there are some possibilities and necessities to enact national laws by taking lessons from international and regional regulations. For this, in my article, I make a framework how we can implement the marine pollution prevention law. We should work about the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change now. So they have the separate department, but I suggest we should separate cell for marine pollution prevention or marine environmental protection. Then we can coordinate the national regulations, analyze the international and regional framework. Then we can implement implement for a comprehensive marine pollution prevention law. So besides, in my research, I found that we should also implement the international cooperation, management principle, regional framework, capacity building framework, technology transfer, public participation and awareness. So we should implement. So I have the concluded remarks. Marine pollution has a devastating impact on marine environment. If the pollution continues in the ocean, it will destroy the marine habitat and biodiversity, and also obstruct the sustainable development and make the whole ecosystem imbalance. Taking into consideration of the strength and weakness of the domestic or international laws, Bangladesh needs to enact a comprehensive act for marine pollution control. Besides, as the land-based marine pollution is the dominant, and my PhD study also considered how to control the land-based pollution. I have some idea about the land-based marine pollution control, and I just put one model for garbage buying model, but I cannot say the details here because this model is under consideration for the Mujib Idea contest. I will present this idea tomorrow at Bangabandhu International Conference Center at 10 a.m. So by developing this model, we can reduce the reduce the land-based marine pollution in our country, I think. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alam. In a sense, you brought all the threads that we have discussed earlier together. The problem is not with the availability of laws to address them. I think the problem is that we do not have a coordinated and empowered body to coordinate all these different aspects that we need to look into. And I think that can take up not just another webinar or another 1.5 to 2 hour sessions. It'll probably take up a whole day.
Yes.
Because our policymakers, you have pointed to the numerous institutions and bodies dealing with the numerous aspects of pollution, sources of pollution, causes of pollution. But these need to be brought together. And unfortunately, we all operate in a what I call the new Westphalian mindset that emerged after what is described as the New World Order came into being in 1945. I describe it as the post-colonial disorder. So we need to work together, and I have been advocating that we cannot get the whole international schema to come together. If that were so, then we would have one set of laws governing the whole entire planet. Even the United States is severely handicapped and hamstrung because of different contesting groups and elements in there. The regional pathway perhaps is the best way to do it. And I think we start with our own Bay of Bengal area and try and work together. It has been pointed out by two of the speakers at least, that SARC has not been able to live up to or fulfill the expectations we had. There are numerous bodies, numerous initiatives, but they have not made any headway. BIMSTEC is there, but BIMSTEC, although it's called Bay of Bengal Initiative, it excludes Malaysia and Indonesia, which are also Bay of Bengal countries. and also affected by and affecting the Bay of Bengal. So we need to now reconsider all these things, learn from our failures, and then perhaps rebuild institutions that can tackle the problems we are facing today, and we are very likely to be facing 50 years from now, or certainly before the end of this century. I can allow 5 minutes or 7 minutes for Q's and A's, quick Q's and A's. If you have, please ask specific questions. If you have statements, give them in writing, and the authors will take that into consideration. Specific questions which you want to address to the authors, to the presenters, and perhaps I'll give 1 minute each to all of them to wind up. Anyone? And host, please help me if I miss. Okay, I see one, Dr. Mohan Das, please.
Thank you, sir.
Question, no statements.
No statements. Thank you. It's really good. I just want to ask Dr. Wahid. All the laws you have mentioned, it is good, but what is the reality implementation in Bengal and relevant coastal zones? Professor Wahid, please.
Hold on, we'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then the persons ask and respond. Mr. Rashid, I see his hand up. Well, his hand is lowered, so okay, please go ahead, respondent.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohan, for your question. Actually, as I do my PhD works in the China, I saw that when China ratified the or signed the Law of the Sea Convention in 1982. In later 1 year, 1983, they signed and implement the Law of the Sea, like a Law of the Sea, but their law name is Marine and Environmental Protection Law, and every year they integrated the laws. So I think we should need the law, but before implement the law, we also should develop the regional collaboration, because ocean has not a boundary. So we should before implementation law, we should develop a regional framework firstly. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I see Mr. Rashid back again with his hand up. Please, Mr. Diu Rashid.
Sir, Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, I had a question to Professor Abdul Rauf that we know the sources of the pollution, and also we know the severe impacts on the biodiversity and the ecosystem. I had a question that can we monitor online or remote sensing system we are developing in process in Bangladesh, not in the world. I know that in the world, there are a lot of systems out there, they are developing. So I had a specific question that in Bangladesh, the government or any other agency that are using the remote sensing in terms of the sensor, not the satellite image. For example, I have seen that in the China and the other area, I have seen that they're using some buoys, few buoys, they set a few buoys in the sea and remote area, and they set the sensor with the buoy, and with the VHF and HF, they send directly the online data to the lab in the remote area. So they monitor the data from and analyze the data from the remote area. For example, the temperature, the salinity, the pH value, the other values of the water, and they monitor the quality of the water. So do we have this system or in the process of that system in Bangladesh? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Professor Sarwar, who is it addressed to? Who did you address this to?
Professor Abdul Rauf.
Professor Rauf, please go ahead and respond.
Okay,
and then
okay, Mr. Rashid, thank you for your query. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rashid, for your query. In fact, yes, globally, the satellite and sensors, people, scientists and governments, different governments, they are using for monitoring and getting pollution information or different information from the ocean using satellite data. In case of Bangladesh, we can also take data from some of the satellites like MODIS Aqua, Landsat TM, and some NOAA-based some of the satellites where we can take data from that satellites to check some of the parameters, not all. Like we can't check the BOD, we can check but we can check the chlorophyll concentration. We can check the particulate organic carbon. We can check some other like temperature, etc. But there is one very crucial constraint from Bangladesh perspective is that if you look at the coast of our country, the water in our coastal water is highly turbid. That's why the satellite images, what it reflects in terms of the data, it's not 100% accurate. So what we need in this case, we need some regional correction to, we need to set some models so that we can correct this data. So this to read the satellite data which are available for measuring some of the pollutants in Bay of Bengal.
Thank you very much. You have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sayyid Ariful Islam, you have your hand up.
Thank you, sir. Sir, thank you, sir. I did not want to actually make a question, but I would like to
Unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself. Okay.
Sorry. Sir, actually, I did not have a question, but I would like to compliment the answers given by Professor Rauf on the question of Commander Rashid. Actually, sir, presently in Bangladesh, we do not have the absolute monitoring and control system. But there are projects in hand. If this project is completed, Bangladesh will develop its capacity to monitor and control the pollution at sea area. Especially the GMDSS project will give certain advantage in case of monitoring and controlling the pollution in the Bay of Bengal. And I mentioned the oil record book. Those are maintained by different ships. These are mandatory documents as per the International Maritime Organization's law, as per MARPOL. If these books are contained and maintained in the ship, Department of Shipping can physically check and detain the ship. So these arrangements are already there. And the satellite imagery and other things that are mentioned here can be used for collecting data and conducting investigation. But physical monitoring and controlling is a very essential matter. For that, we got to depend on the Department of Shipping, and there are presently smart buoys available in the world market. And if these smart buoys are installed in different places at the coastal area of Bangladesh, probably we'll be able to get the information very quickly and intervene the polluter at sea. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Actually, when you were making a presentation, I made these comments in my notes myself. You referred to MARPOL, and it was very evident that MARPOL has a prescriptive function. And we can all come up with all the best laws in the world. The problem is who monitors whether the laws are being observed, and what is the mechanism to enforce the laws and punish transgressors. Both aspects, I think, are solely missing, both internationally as well as mostly in the national spheres. Some countries have more capacity, others have very little capacity. And particularly when we are dealing with a commons like the Bay of Bengal, no one country can do it because others will resent it. So the regional route and working on the regional route is the best approach. It's the most practical approach because international law is still international customary law, which means that it is only as enforceable as the entire international community agree to its enforceability. If there's even one country and one powerful country which will oppose it, you cannot enforce it. That is the whole problem that we face with our global commons. And in a sense, it was in one of the presentations, I think Mr. Alam's or Mr. Sarvas or both referred to it, that there are myriad organizations. We have 10, 15, 20 organizations dealing with 10, 15, 20, 30 different types of pollutants coming in. There are different areas which have to be addressed. But the ecosystem is an integrated ecosystem. We cannot address it compartmentalized. We do not have a body even nationally to bring all the different threads together to make a cohesive plan to say, okay, all these interact with each other. How do we interact with each other first to go forward to somewhere where we'll bring down the total damage being done to the ecosystem? And our minds have not yet been able to grasp that principle. And so everybody is intent on turf protection. There are ego trips. We have to learn, and that is the fundamental flaw in the international system now. Because the international system is comprised of nation states. Nation states are based on the Westphalian model. The Westphalian model enjoins that you have very sharply delineated borders you cannot transgress. You cannot go into the realm of another country to enforce something. You cannot engage in hot pursuit. And therefore, previously, when we did not have such a Westphalian borderless ecosystem is not Westphalian, then you can do all these things. Now you cannot. So there are 5 countries in the region, all face the same problem, but only 2 are willing to work and 3 are not. You can make no headway at all. So initially, first, we have to get at least our own regional countries on board, persuade them that this is the problem which faces them as much as it faces us, convince them that this will affect their populations and their well-being of life as much as it affects our well-being and our citizens. Then perhaps we can sit together, and we should not think in terms of ceding sovereignty. This is the fundamental crux of the model. Everybody thinks, if I go into this, I'm ceding sovereignty. Retool yourself to think, I'm pooling sovereignty. We bring all our sovereignties together to act together for a common cause. I don't know whether I'll see that happening in my lifetime, but that's what I'm trying to tell everyone. Maybe someday somebody will wake up and say this needs to be done, but it's not happening today. So we are well over time. We were supposed to have ended at 12:30, but it's been a fulsome discussion of all the issues. And I think you can have a continuation of this in another 2 or 3 hour session. Perhaps each presentation deserves merits a consideration of at least an hour and a half threadbare discussion on many points. And unfortunately, that's the nature of these events. BIMRAD and Bay of Bengal Center will certainly continue collaborating on this. And perhaps, where you are going to present a paper, Dr. Alam, I think you mentioned it, where you have the blueprint. That blueprint is important for policymakers at least to grasp the elements. Because if they don't grasp it, it's not going to travel down the bureaucracy, and it's not going to translate into the ecosystems we are trying to preserve. With those remarks, if nobody has anything further to say, with your permission, Chair, I'll bring the proceedings to a close. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation and for your invaluable comments and inputs, and certainly the knowledge that you have shared with us to wake many of us up to the dangers that threaten us. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. There is something called as concurring remarks and vote of thanks.
Yes, please.
If you allow, sir.
Yes, please, please. My apologies.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected Acting Chairman of BIMRAD, respected moderator, keynote speaker, panel discussion, and August gathering. Assalamu alaikum and very good noon. It is a great honor for me to speak today on behalf of BIMRAD and Khulna University. At the outset, may I take this opportunity to extend my sincere thanks and profound gratitude to the moderator, keynote speaker, panelist of the webinar. I sincerely acknowledge their kind participation and also acknowledge the distinguished guests for their kind presence and make the webinar a meaningful one. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of today's discussion was marine pollution, a growing peril to marine and coastal zone of Bangladesh. It represents a very pertinent issue for Bangladesh in the present scenario. The topic addresses the timely issue not only for the maritime community in Bangladesh, but also for the neighboring countries. If we look at today's theme, it is basically comprised of two intertwined issues. Firstly, analyzing marine pollution activities from ships, local vessels, industries, untreated effluents from establishments, etc. And secondly, how the marine pollution damaging our biodiversity, flora and fauna, and degrading our marine environment, including the coastal zone. You must agree with me that today's discussion was very fruitful. The speakers who have expertise on the relative fields have deliberately presented their perspectives and findings before us. We are enlightened to know a lot of various outcomes and new ideas, which have certainly broadened our views on the critical issues of marine pollution. Eminent fellows, the learned moderator of the webinar has aptly summarized the whole discussion. However, I will touch upon few points in very short. When you talk about the marine pollution, it has a direct bearing with the land pollution also. Land-based marine pollution has taken the central position in contributing to pollution and contamination in the marine environment. So it is obvious that the national policies has to be synergized, considering the land and marine pollution. Then we have to develop an active marine pollution monitoring system. Lack of monitoring will delay implementation of prevention policies in force. Again, there is a semantic gap between the policy and research. We need a comprehensive policy to prevent marine pollution. While formulating these policies, we need fundamental research and on-ground information. Based on these information, prevention policies may be updated. This needs to be bridged in a comprehensive manner. Thus, it is important to communicate the research findings to policymakers. Though many organizations are working on this subject, still there are scopes of improvement in terms of quality, research, and findings. And again, marine pollution is also a global issue. A regional initiative through a global agreement is essential to control transboundary river pollution, especially for the combating plastic waste in marine region. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the points actually I wanted to highlight. Before I conclude, on behalf of the acting chairman, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks and profound gratitude once again to the moderator, keynote speaker, panelists for sparing their valuable time to participate in today's event. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to Khulna University for taking the initiative to host this webinar jointly with BIMRAD. We look forward to more collaborative engagements in future. I also sincerely acknowledge the gracious presence of all distinguished guests and marine scholars. Thank you all. Have a good day. May I now request the Honorable Moderator to announce the closer of our session. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Minar. I apologize that I announced it prematurely. thank you all for joining and not just listening, but I hope that many of you will go away with ideas that you may have thought about, but not seriously, but you'll think about it seriously. Everybody has a role to play in going to where we should be going. They may not have official roles, but they have unofficial roles in talking to people they meet with to bring awareness. I think a lot of damage we have done ourselves to our ecosystem because we are not aware of what individual actions, how they pile up and make a collective onslaught into what sustains us. So the more people who are aware, they should not keep it to themselves, they should share it with others in their own official capacities, unofficial capacities, everybody. Because the biggest damage is because of lack of awareness, lack of information, lack of understanding of the dynamics that is at play in how our activities harm the environment. In a sense, the Homo sapiens, as the dominant species, is very largely responsible. That comes out very clearly. There is no two questions about it in the damage that we have done to our ecosystem. The environment is just one part of the ecosystem. Don't forget it. Everything that we do to every other part of the ecosystem goes and impacts on the environment. And from that, you have all the consequences of global warming and climate change and everything. So it's a cyclical process. It embraces all elements together. We cannot think of the environment as partitioned environments. Thank you very much. And I will now bring this webinar to a close. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and have a good day.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Thank you, sir.